You're probably not gonna believe what I'm gonna tell you, but I hate sand. What I do love, though, is an epic battle, and an epic battle here is what we have between two multiplayer veterans, Sol Invictus from Rome 2 and Uruk, a veteran from Troy. Now, who's gonna win? Watch and find out. The Hittite battle plan is simple. Extreme range dominance with Nubian longbowmen and chariot supremacy. Meanwhile, the Egyptians have better line infantry overall, Sheridan mercenaries, which are just gods amongst men, and elite axe magi. So basically, yeah, rush army versus more balanced composition. The Nubians are already opening fire on the levies, and this is not the most cost-efficient use of ammo. Nubians are some of the best archers in the game for price-to-performance ratio, and wasting a lot of ammunition on the Upper Egyptian militia clubmen, I dare you to say that 3 times in a row fast, is probably not the best. Anyway, the Hittite chariots are getting a downhill charge into the Egyptians. They actually connect, but here are 2 problems. Sand heavily penalizes heavy units. Surprise, surprise, so the charge doesn't really do anything, and the Egyptians shoot their arrows into them, so yeah. It actually ends up penalizing the Hittites and they lose more HP. Here, Uruk actually moves his chariots away on time, so the Anatolians are just taking chip damage. And Uruk has had enough, it's time to go into action. The Nubians keep firing at the Upper Egyptian militia clubmen, and they are just destroying their armor. Here we're gonna have an epic charge between the Sheridan and the Abiru. Mercenary on mercenary, axe on axe, violence on violence, that's what we came here for, and this is just gonna be a slaughterfest. Sheridan are one of the best units in the game, even though they're not the most expensive when used correctly, and Abiru are dirt cheap, but they can perform really well. At the same time, we have a chariot charge with the Anatolians into the Egyptians, but the Egyptians are reinforced by the Sheridan chargers and regular spearmen, so unfortunately, this is not gonna go good for the Hittites. Meanwhile, on the other side, the levies are about to clash the epic slow-motion action of Upper Egyptian militia clubmen into the Isuans and Kashkians will obliterate them without any counterplay. Meanwhile, the Hittite chargers are getting ready for action. Now, these guys are already heavy, and they get slaughtered by sand. Now, here's a bigger problem. They have a debuff called Overburdened, so they get even more extreme penalties from sand. They would normally slaughter the Sheridan without any counterplay in this situation, but the sand debuffs their stats, and the Sheridan are apparently cheering because of that. No matter, that was a great charge, and here we can see the front lines, another charge by the Hittite chargers. I mean, come on, it's in their name. But look how cripplingly slow they are because of all this sand. No, seriously, I hate sand. We see a pretty epic duel between the levies here and the chargers just taking their time, you know, walking downtown. Meanwhile, Sol Invictus changed his bowman to shoot at the general, and Ramses is not gonna have a good time here. If he dies, it's over for the Egyptians, but the Hittites get a great chariot charge into the lines here, just mowing the men down left and right. Now, this is disgustingly good for them. This actually lets the chargers mop up a part of the flank, but here the left side has been won, as we've already seen. The chariots are coming in for another charge, and they actually go through the Sheridan. Not as decisive as it could have been, but it does something. But the Egyptians countercharge. And unfortunately, that is going to be the end of those Anatolian chariots. Speaking of which, we see another charge by the Anatolians here into the Egyptian lines. They connect with the levies, they connect with the Magi as well, but the chariots are getting slaughtered because of the Magi. Now, here is one problem. When you're looking at the battlefield, the Hittite general has been close to the bowman the whole game. Sol Invictus was very careful with his general, but that extra chariot could have so easily turned around the infantry combat. On the left flank, the chariots basically lost without any counterplay, even though the chargers killed the Sheridan as much as they could. On the right flank, the Hittites are winning, and the center is being obliterated by the Egyptians. Ramses is forced to join in the fighting. Better to, you know, die fighting than die getting shot without any counterplay. The militia is getting destroyed by the chargers, but that is to be expected. Now the Hittite general actually moves in for some slaughter. By moving in, I mean painstakingly walking slow because it's the sand, you know. There's gonna be a charge into the Egyptian chariots, and he should definitely win this. Even though it doesn't look as epic as it could because of chariot combat, he manages to do devastating damage, but the Sheridan chargers are coming in, and this is not looking good for the Hittite general. Meanwhile, the Nubians are just trying to kite away. The right flank is overwhelmed by the Sheridan, they're collapsing, and the Nubian longbowmen, they're out of ammo, they did what they could, now they have to run for their lives. Meanwhile, the Hittites, yeah, this is a lot of chariot action going on right now. The general sees the conscripts, he just goes straight through them, no counterplay. Moving to support his men, and he's just slaughtering. Look at the damage caused. But here the Egyptians also have an opening to go into the Isuan militia. Not really much happens there. Listen, slow-mo. This could still almost be anyone's game. The Egyptian infantry is completely crushed. The Nubians can actually fight really well in melee. And the Hittite general, despite being damaged, he is a murder machine. But what is actually gonna happen? Now the Egyptians actually get a nice Memphis drift into the Nubian longbowmen here. This is gonna decimate them. It's just a flawless, beautiful charge, honestly. The Nubian longbowmen actually have swords, so they can fight back in melee, but it's not gonna help him in this situation. The Hittite general is also desperately trying to salvage what he can, but the Sheridan chargers catch him here. He will lose a lot of HP. He goes into the Egyptians, into Ramses. It is the final clash between the generals. Look at Ramses over there. He's just trying not to die. He somehow managed to survive the Nubian volleys this whole game, but unfortunately, it is what it is. Good game to both players. Now, let's take a look at the key moments of the battle. Sand. No, seriously, the terrain just gimped the Hittite units so hard, meanwhile the lighter Egyptian units were not as heavily punished. The Nubians did great damage this game, but they targeted levies, and that wasted about half their ammo. However, once they swapped fire to Ramses and the Medjay, they did great value. Sheridan doing Sheridan stuff, nothing new. The Egyptians were faster to back up the chariots in the duel, so they managed to decisively win the left flank. Hittite chargers did a terrific job, but sadly due to the terrain, they weren't as terrific as they could have been. The Anatolian chariots did a great job at crushing the infantry. However, if Sol Invictus used his general more actively in the battle, it could have been game over for the Egyptians. Now, that was an intense battle. So the Sheridan got amazing value across the board, definitely helped Egypt to win. Same for the Medjay. Levies, who cares? Conscripts did a pretty good job though, and the chariots, nice value. On the Hittite side, look how many kills the general got. If he was used earlier in the battle, I'm pretty sure Sol Invictus could have won this. The tribesmen did fine. The chargers did good overall, but honestly the sand just penalized them too much. Kashkians were fine. Abiru, considering they were fighting Sheridan, were fine. Longbows mostly got their money back, but, you know, better targeting would have probably made the battle more decisive. And unfortunately, the chariots, due to balancing issues, did not perform as good as they could have. Anyway, that was a pretty intense game. GG to both players. There's more to come, so stay tuned. And until the next time...